Welcome back to another segment of ACRP TV. Our spotlight today is on confronting disparities in cancer research. We've got a great guest with us, Warren Whyte, who's the VP of Strategic Partnerships and Customer Success. I like that, at ConcertAI. Warren, thank you so much for joining us today.
Glad to be here, Michael. Thank you.
All right, so Warren, we're hearing a lot about racial issues and disparities and things in the news lately, but talk about it as it pertains to cancer research. I don't think people really understand the nature of the problem here.
Yeah, that's right. And it's unfortunate because racial inequality as it pertains to healthcare and specifically within cancer has been around for decades. And it's something that I think only recently has started to come back into the forefront because of the pandemic. COVID-19 has sort of had a disproportionate burden on minorities, specifically Black and Latino communities. And as a result, that health inequity has translated into increased education and understanding about how we could achieve equity for all patients. And so as a result, cancer is a part of that. And so I've been pleased to see this year a number of organizations and institutions start to really do something about it in trying to address cancer care inequities through education, outreach, and particularly in terms of investments made in areas like clinical trials.
So this is important and exciting because we've been sort of spinning wheels, and not necessarily for lack of effort, but the industry has really struggled with improving diversity in the workforce, diversity in the patient population. We're talking specifically about cancer and oncology, which is such a huge part of clinical trials. Talk a little bit about how we got to this point.
Yeah, sure. I think for starters, if you look over the last, I'd say 3 or 4 decades, I think overall we've done a good job as a nation in terms of addressing certain disparities. I feel like patients are living longer, they're leading healthier, more productive lives, and I think that's the case across all races. Having said that, though, if you were to take a closer look at certain subpopulations, certain minority groups, and certain cancers, you would see disparities either remaining over the last several decades or start to appear. And I'll give you an example. If you look at breast cancer, for example, among African American women, you would find that Black American women are more likely to die from breast cancer than whites. And I think it's about 35 or 40% more likely to die. But such a disparity did not exist 4 decades ago. And so you ask yourself, well, how is that possible? If we are getting healthier as a nation, how is it that certain populations and certain minority groups are having worse outcomes compared to their white counterparts? And for me, I think one area that we need to take a harder look at is clinical trial. Not only participation, but also the workforce, the diversity workforce. Because that's really the source of innovation for healthcare and the source of innovation for personalized medicine that could really do a great job of enhancing outcomes for specific individuals that are dealing with very specific conditions. But in order for personalized medicine to work, we need to ensure that the participation in these clinical trials in which these therapeutics are being investigated is truly reflective of the population as a whole. I know that minorities make up roughly 40% of the national population when you consider Blacks, Hispanics, Asians, Native Americans. And yet, when it comes to clinical trial participation, you're only seeing within any specific minority group 2 to 5% of those participants being of minorities background. And so it's unfortunate, but if we don't tackle that specific problem, then you're going to see disparities continue or start to decline. And so we need to do a better job of that. So I think that's how we've gotten here, in part. is just not greater attention paid to clinical trial enrollment diversity and clinical workforce diversity.
Let's finish up today by talking about, because it's important, it's invaluable to raise the problem, and talk is important and words are important, and you can't address the problem until you identify it, but then you've got to take concrete steps. And let's talk right now a little bit about what we've written about this, what you guys are doing, some of your grant programs. Talk a little bit about what you all are doing and what industry can do to really put some muscle behind fixing this.
Yeah, I mean, and first I will say that, the National Institute of Health, NIH, has played an instrumental and leading role to fight for equality. They have a number of initiatives that have been around for several years trying to tackle this problem. But I think this year, with the pandemic, with some of the racial injustices that we've seen play out on the national stage, there have been greater participation by the private sector. And as a result, organizations and institutions are no longer waiting for federal agencies to act. And if we are going to tackle a complex and systemic problem like health inequity and cancer care inequity, we really need stakeholders from various backgrounds, various industries to come together to work collectively to tackle this. So this means we need academia to come to the table. We need pharma come to the table. We need health technology companies coming to the table as we are moving more to a virtual world, in part induced by COVID-19. We really need these diverse players coming together to tackle this problem. And so you had mentioned it briefly, Michael, with regards to grants, and that's something that my company, ConcertAI, is trying to do. It's provide financial support as well as access to medical data and other forms of clinical information to cancer researchers and other promising investigators to try and identify more novel and innovative solutions to tackle a long-standing problem. And that's not to say that the solutions that have existed today are ineffective. They are. We just need more of it. And we need to start thinking more creatively about it. And so I am fortunate to work for an organization that is sort of putting their money where their mouth is and contributing to tackling this problem. The other thing, I'll just briefly wrap up, is with the need for education. We need to educate the next generation of researchers and students to give them the tools and the foundational understanding about this problem, such that the next generation could really hopefully eliminate this problem that has gone back to my grandparents' birth. So,
thank you very much for joining us, Warren. This has been our ACRP TV spotlight on confronting disparities in cancer research. We've been speaking with Warren Whyte, who's the VP of Strategic Partnerships and Customer Success at ConcertAI. Warren, thank you again for joining us.
Thank you for having me.